Bonjour, comment allez-vous? Test 3, All Blacks vs France. Hell of a game in the end, and jeepers, but let's get into it. Guys, as per usual in this video, I'm going to be covering 4 main areas, so I'll give you an analysis of the test, what I thought of it. I'll analyse both sides, what I thought we learned from the All Blacks and the French in this series, and then I'll give you some key players, some analysis there, and then stick around till the end for a summary of Test 3 between the All Blacks versus France. Jeepers, I mean, a lot of changes from the All Blacks and obviously a B or C strength French side for this final test. Certainly was not a great start by the All Blacks. I think that's pretty clear. Error-ridden, and geez, that French side came out and they certainly took their chances, didn't they? I mean, 10-0 lead with a brilliant try sniping around the maul by Garrick, and obviously 10-0 lead 20 minutes in. The All Blacks, they just sort of looked rusty, they looked inaccurate and a lot of errors, and they struggled to get their game going. Obviously there's that pretty good grubber in behind by Cortez Ratama and a pretty good try to Will Jordan. And then obviously just before half time, I thought, that obviously the French were leading 19-10. And let me know your thoughts on this, but I think that was a very key moment in the game. Like, if the French went in at halftime 19 points to 10 leading, I think that would have done wonders for the French confidence and really put a spanner in the works, so to say. So, but obviously that try just before halftime, taking it to 19 points to 17, was significant. And ultimately it just kept the All Blacks just in there after such a rusty first half. I think the second half was probably dominated a little bit more by the All Blacks. Well, there wasn't so many errors from the All Blacks, and they didn't really probably get their game going the way they would have liked in that second half. Ultimately, the All Blacks just kept hammering away at the French, and then finally, that grubber in behind by Damien McKenzie and a pretty good try to Duplessis Karifi. And then again, nothing in the game at all, really. 22 points to 19, and then obviously the All Blacks just keep hammering away. And geez, Jordie Barrett, I'll get to him later in the video. I think he's got to be on form, the best second five in the world at the moment. Absolutely brilliant break by him up the middle. Pass inside to Brodie McAllister, and look, that kick, or that try sort of sealed the game. Full-time score 29-19 to the All Blacks, so, they got the W. It's what matters in the history books, but jeepers, certainly a couple of moments that the French will be disappointed with, particularly letting that try in from me just before half-time. That would have been significant for the French. That kick, I think it was about 15-20 minutes to go from the left-hand side. If that goes over, it's game on. That would have been quite a significant impact on the game. And then obviously that final missed tackle on Jordie Barrett. Yeah. But certainly this was a quality French outfit. Guys, if you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button, like the channel, chuck some banter down about the All Blacks and the French in this final game. Hell of a battle, and, test match rugby at its best, guys. Secondly, I think if we analyse both sides, firstly, look at France. I mean, look, they didn't win a game in the series, but for them to bring a B or C strength French side all the way across the other side of the world to New Zealand, and particularly for some of their players to play the way they did, the confidence, their attacking patterns, and the relentless pressure they put on the All Blacks, it just shows France is really in a strong position. They're really developing some good depth in French rugby, and I think they'll be a really scary side come the 2027 Rugby World Cup. I think as well that the French, they're just, they've got a real nice way about them, don't they? You look at that French defence, big physicality and power that they bring. Brilliant line speed with Sean Edwards leading the defence. They're a hard team to crack, and particularly that's their B or C strength side. And then conversely, you look at their attack, again, just so instinctive. Big ball runners with the power up the middle, muscling up, and then just on instinct, they put in their kicks in behind or chip kicks or spin the ball into space with raw speed. You know, they're really a dangerous attacking side. They play on instinct so well. So a lot of positives for this French side. And again, I'm interested to hear that the French followers of this channel, their comments down about the French underneath. I think you look at the All Blacks. Look, again, it was, you know, a number of new players, a few players returning and haven't had a lot of rugby for a while. I mean, the positives were that they showed a lot of grit. You know, things didn't go their way a lot of times in that game. I think it was 4 held up tries. So look, if all 4 of those tries weren't held up, you know, the ball game's completely different and it's a very good win to the All Blacks. But, you know, look, the facts are all 4 of those tries were held up. There was a number of chances that just weren't executed and taken. But look, I just sort of thought that it didn't start well for the All Blacks. The first 20 minutes, there was a number of sort of uncharacteristic errors that put pressure on the All Blacks, let the French into the game. The French got their confidence up and really took it to the All Blacks. I think particularly the All Blacks, they were really boosted off the bench, and you know, the likes of Geordie Barrett, like, he was significant off the bench. You know, Duplessis Karifi with his leadership, you know, he made some decisive decisions, and obviously a debut for Brodie McAllister at hooker. Yeah, a lot of positives there, but again, I think the main one for me is their attack execution. Jeepers. I mean, and let me know your thoughts on this down below. Maybe this is harsh, but it just seemed like they just created chances all game and just didn't seem to execute most of the game. It's a bit of a concern, isn't it? You know, a couple of held up tries, but again, you know, why don't they just need a bit more patience? You know, why weren't they executing their attacking plays, moving it into space, you know, and considering this is a B or C strength French side, you know, what's their attack going to be like when they come up and try and execute to score tries against, you know, very strong international defensive sides, you know, the likes of Springboks, England, Ireland. So, yeah, definitely drip back to the drawing board for Razor there, and there's some massive test matches coming up. But look, I just think, you know, my opinion, the biggest game of World Rugby in 2025 is the All Blacks versus the Springboks at Eden Park. Based off that All Blacks performance, that would be a very tough game for the All Blacks to win against the Springboks. But anyway, key players from the game. Yeah, a bit of analysis there. And I'm interested to hear some of your comments about my comments anyway. So the first one was Damian McKenzie. Look, it's a hard one with him. I think you look at his game, there were significant improvements in his game management from the prior year, particularly his kicking game. Those grubbers in behind towards the end were particularly effective, and I don't think he had that in his game last year. Look, his defense was solid. I thought his kicking was solid, but maybe it's not completely him, but I think if you compare Damian McKenzie to the likes of Beauden Barrett, I think there's a bit of a difference in leadership. You know, I definitely think if Beauden Barrett was starting at first 5, you know, the game management and overall leadership in that attack and game management would have been quite different. So, I mean, that's tough, but certainly some areas there where, and again, it's not just him, but the game management of the All Blacks, particularly on attack, just seemed to lack variety and leadership. So he'll keep building anyway. Samapeni Finau for the All Blacks. He's a class player at Super Rugby level, and he's definitely building. I thought he did some real muscled up really well with his ball carries, particularly his body height, speed. He took it to the French. Some very strong ball carries. I guess my concern with Samapeni in this game was his defence though. And I mean, look, you compare him, and this is test match level, you're playing against the best people in the world, and he needs to be striving to be, you know, one of the best players in the world as an All Black. But you compare Samapeni Finau to the likes of a Sia Khaleesi in terms of physicality on defence. I remember, I think it was the second half, and one of the French forwards did a sort of a pick and go, and Samapeni was a bit caught unaware and just sort of managed to scrape his ankles, and then the French forward got a couple of metres. Whereas I just think the likes of a Sia Khaleesi, if that was him defending, he would shoulder on, fully muscle up and probably would have driven that French forward back. So yeah, something for Samapini to work on, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on his physicality at Test match level. Geordie Barrett for the All Blacks. I mean, Japers, I just thought he was magnificent for the All Blacks again. And as I said before, I honestly think on form, I think he's the best second five in the world at the moment. Like, he made a try-saving tackle in the corner when he got on, that break up the middle when the All Blacks attack seemed to be pretty lackluster. You know, the leadership and just his composure and experience at Test match level, I think he was a real great impact player off the bench and a quality second five for the All Blacks. For the French, Gabin Villiers, I mean, wow. Look, he was just class, I thought. Brilliant. And he's kind of like a Springbok Cheslin Colby, isn't he? He's just so elusive on his feet. But I think the big thing with him, and again, I go back to the All Blacks with some of my concerns about the All Blacks wingers, but, you know, Gabin Villiers, you know, when he gets the ball last night, he generally would break the first tackle, or he was a real handful to get on the deck. And that's what you expect from an international winger. I think if you compare his performance against the likes of maybe a Sevu Reece last night, I think Gabin Villiers was head and shoulders better than the likes of Sevu Reece in that performance last night. So some real concerns for the All Blacks in the wing calibre. And look, Will Jordan was amazing last night. He was good, but I don't think he's a winger. I think he's best at fullback. And so again, that highlights some real concerns, which is surprising for the All Blacks. But I think that they've got to have a look at their wingers, because they're not at international level of some of these other world-class wingers anyway. Michael Gillard for the French, Japers. Look, he's a real player for the future, isn't he? Look, he's not a big lump of a man, is he? But I just like the way his mentality on the field, isn't he? Like, he's just at you, competitive, both sides of the ball. You know, his work at the breakdown was brilliant. His work on defence, magnificent, involved in, you know, a few of those try-saving tackles and where the French held up the All Blacks a few times. And his ball carriers, again, just awesome, wasn't it? So, a real player for the future for the French. On another note, guys, away from rugby, my wife and I just had our first child, our daughter called Olivia, which you can see in the photo of this video here. It's pretty proud to be a dad. It's a significant moment in, you know, anyone's life, and so to be a dad now, my first child, my first daughter, is amazing, to be honest. It's definitely a new journey, and yeah, for the numerous returning followers of this channel, I mean, hopefully this doesn't happen too much, but, you know, with a bit of fatigue with me, there might be some players' names pronounced the wrong way or something like that, so hopefully that can be forgiven as a new dad. But yeah, anyway, I'm sharing this to the returning followers of the channel. Finally, guys, look, in summary, I think it was a good hard-fought win to the All Blacks, a pretty rusty performance, and you'd be pretty proud for the French. I think they've developed a lot of good players on the series, and certainly they'll take away a lot from these 3 games in New Zealand, and they certainly put their foot forward in Test 3. Guys, if you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, chuck some banter down about the All Blacks and the French. Cheers.